بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم أما بعد. So inshallah, we're moving on to Mutlaq and Muqayyad in this lesson. So we have a quick recap. We said we have Istidlal. This is unit 2. Now we use a dalil. Mentioned in unit 1, Quran, Hadith, etc. But in unit 2, we're going to split the Istidlal into 2 types. Linguistic Istidlal, linguistic deduction, and non-linguistic deduction. So in part 1 of unit 2, we will study how we do Istidlal using the words. So Istidlal lafzi and Istidlal ghayr lafzi, also known as Istidlal ma'nawi, or non-linguistic Istidlal. Okay? When we're looking at the wording, then how do we have to look at the wording? We look at the words individually, an individual analysis of the words, or we look at the words collectively, kalam analysis, collectively the words as a whole. And in kalima, we said we have to look at one thing. The first thing we look at is clarity of the words. The second thing we look at is the usage of the words. Is it clear? Not clear? If it's clear, how do we approach it? If it's not clear, how we approach it? And after that, we'll go on to how we use the words. We'll discuss that inshallah, bit by bit, slowly, inshallah. Okay? Right. Then we said the words, if it's wadih or it's ghayr wadih. Wadih means it's clear. We said 2 types of wadih, khas and am. We haven't got to am yet, we're still on khas. And we said khas is what? Both of these is we know the meaning. But in khas, we're referring to something which doesn't have units. It's one individual name, one individual idea, one individual group. So even if you're talking about a group, but you're not talking about the group as individuals, you're talking about the groups as a whole. That's also khas. So whenever we talk about something with a known meaning and which doesn't have multiple members, just one member. And we said the dalala, in terms of dalala, what's khas? Is it qat'iyya dhanni? It's going to be what? It's qat'i. Because the meaning is known and we know it refers to that one thing. If you change the meaning of a khas, you try to reinterpret a khas, then that's almost like rejecting the Quran itself. So you can reject the word of the Quran and the meaning of the Quran. And because the meaning of a khas is qat'iyyu dalala, it is known, this is the meaning of it. So therefore, if you reject this or you're trying to reinterpret it, it's as if you don't accept the words of the Quran. Is this clear to everybody? Yes? Any questions? Yeah, okay. Now there are 2 types of khas. What are there? There are 2 types of khas. One is called mutlaq, or one is called muqayyad. What is mutlaq? Let me explain. So instead of learning them, let's understand what it means. What atlaqa mean? Like for example, the word atlaqa and talaq means to let something free. So for example, in talaq, a woman is in a man's marriage. When he gives talaq, she is divorced, she is free to go and get married to somebody else. So mutlaq. You say atlaqa rasasahu, when you shoot a gun, he let go of the bullet, meaning he shot the bullet. Atlaqa, mutlaq is what? Unrestricted. And muqayyad, what's qaydun mean? Within its balagha, qayd means additional conditions. Literally it means, what's that point in Muntakhabat? Al-ilmu saydun wal kitabatu qaydun. Qaydun means what was the word for qaydun there, translation? Like a handcuff or a trap or some kind of lock. So muqayyad means it's locked in. So mutlaq means unrestricted, free, loose, and muqayyad means it's tied down. It's what? Come together. You get it? No. So mutlaq is a khas word which has no restriction. When I say restriction, it has no naat, it has no hal, it's just on its own. It's like clear. Is this not clear? But these are all clear because it's khas, and khas is part of wadih, but it's not restricted. For example, if I say qalamun, qalamun means pen. It can mean a ballpoint pen, it can mean a felt tip pen, it can mean a red pen, it can mean a blue pen, it can mean any pen. So if I said to you, get me a pen, without any context, take out any circumstances, any context, any scenario, and if I say, hati qalaman, get me a pen. Yes, and there's no context. Obviously, if there's context, then it will change. But if there's no pen, no context, then you can get me anything that in the language is called a qalam, whether it's blue, whether it's black, whether it's red, whether it's new, whether it's old, whether it's big, whether it's small, anything that is a qalam, that's mutlaq, because there's no conditions. Mutlaq, atlaqa, it has been left unrestricted. Is that clear? And if we say muqayyad, it's been tied down. It has a restriction. For example, qalamun jadidun. The word jadid is now saying, well, not any pen, it has to be a new pen. Do you understand? Are you following? Now, one thing we have to remember here is that, I'm not sure if I mentioned it later on, but when you hear mutlaq and muqayyad, so when something is muqayyad, it doesn't mean it's muqayyad in all ways. Muqayyad means it's restricted in one particular way. So for example, this word qalam is muqayyad. In which aspect is it muqayyad? Whether it's new or old. But at the same time, it's mutlaq regarding to what? It's mutlaq regarding color. If you're from America, just to make you happy, color. Or what? Regarding color, ink. That's the same thing, color and ink. Size, nib type. So there's a qaid in regards to it being new or old. So it's mutlaq in all other aspects. It's muqayyad in this aspect. Do you understand what's happening so far? So look, in the Quran we have here tahriru raqaba, to free a slave. Raqaba literally means neck. Raqaba means neck. And from here we know that raqaba, Allah has encouraged many times before when it was slavery, if you do this crime or this sin or this mistake, free a slave, free a slave, free a slave. So slave was always emancipation was encouraged from the Prophet ﷺ to emancipate the slave, free the slaves. Now, in the top example, the word raqaba, is it mutlaq or is it muqayyad? We say here what? Raqaba is what? This is mutlaq in all aspects. So for example, in the top example, Allah says free a slave. Now this slave is mutlaq in which, okay, now next one, it says here, فَتَحْرِيرُ رَقَبَةٍ مُؤْمِنَةٍ, free a believing slave. Now this is not what? This is now muqayyad. But not muqayyad, so there's two different rulings. In one ruling you have to just free a slave, it's mutlaq. And in one it says تَحْرِيرُ رَقَبَةٍ مُؤْمِنَةٍ, free a believing slave. So now what do we have? Now we know this verse is muqayyad in which aspect? Is muqayyad in faith. In terms of faith, you can't have any faith. For this ruling, the slave must be a believer. For freeing this slave, whatever the ruling that comes before it. And in the top one, it doesn't say believer. So in terms of gender, are both verses what? Mutlaq and Muqayyad in terms of gender. G. Both verses are what? Mutlaq. Because it doesn't say believing man or believing woman. In terms of race, white, black, brown, blue, Arab, non-Arab, African, European, American, South American. Is there any restriction regarding the race? So regarding race, both verses are what? Mutlaq. Yes? Regarding gender, race, age. Does it say young, old? Both verses are mutlaq regarding what? Age. You get the idea? Yes? Education level. Education. Both verses are what? Mutlaq. The second verse is muqayyad in one aspect. Which aspect is it muqayyad in? In its belief. Do you understand? So a mutlaq is any verse or any word, any khas word whose meaning is known and it has no conditions, no restrictions regarding that. And a muqayyad is any action, is any word which has a condition. But when a word becomes muqayyad, it only becomes muqayyad in one aspect. It remains mutlaq in the other aspects. Is that clear? Everybody following? Okay, now moving on. The next masla we have here, the next question we have, the next issue we have here is, if we have, let's look at an example here. We have here, give me a red pen so I can mark the exams. In this example, the word pen, is it mutlaq or is it muqayyad? The word pen, is it mutlaq or is it muqayyad? In terms of color of the ink, it's muqayyad, isn't it? Because it says red, because you have the word here, red. If I said, get me a pen so I can mark the exams. So this is what we say here, this is what? This is muqayyad in terms of color. In terms of color, what is this, mutlaq or muqayyad? The second one, example number 2. Is it mutlaq or is it muqayyad? It's mutlaq. That means specified. The third example, get me a pen so I can make a note. In here, what's this as well in terms of color? What is it? It's also mutlaq. Now the question is, if I am saying this one statement to you, would you say, well, okay, we have number one, we have number two, and we have number three. Do I need to transfer the qaid from 1 to 2? And do you need to transfer the qaid from 1 to 3? What would you think? So we have here in sentence number 1, it's muqayyad, the color is muqayyad, red pen. In scenario number 2, it's mutlaq, there's no mention of the word pen, color of the pen. And scenario number 3, there is no mention of color as well. So in terms of color, number 1 is muqayyad, and number 2 and number 3 are mutlaq. So now, when in scenario number 2, do you think you need to bring over the qaid of red? Tell me and explain to me your answer. Correct. What we would say is, yes, you would need to bring over the qaid. Why? Because we're both talking about the same scenario. We're both talking about getting a person the pen to mark the exams. Would you bring that qaid from number 1 over to number 3? Would you bring the qaid from number 1 over to number 3 and say, well, I need to make a note to get me a red pen? And you say, you must get the teacher a red pen here because he mentioned red pen in number 1. What would you say here? What's your opinion regarding it? Yeah, we said we wouldn't bring it over. Why? Because it's a different scenario. It's the same ruling, get me a pen, but it's not talking about exams anymore. It's talking about what? Just making a note. So it's a different situation. So in regard to this, the different schools, Imam Abu Hanifa, Imam Shafi, they have different approaches. But I'm sticking to the Hanafi way, is that what do we say? That if the one sentence, one text is mutlaq, is muqayyad, and there's another text is mutlaq, but they're talking about the same ruling, same sabab, same everything. It's the same. Forget sabab now. We haven't done that word yet. It's talking about the same exact thing. We will bring the qaid over and make the second mutlaq muqayyad as well. But if it's different topics, different situations, we wouldn't bring it over. For example, Man qala la ilaha illallah dakhala al-jannah is a hadith. Whoever says la ilaha illallah dakhala al-jannah. Let me explain to you. The word qala, what does qala really means? Man fa'ala al-qawla, isn't it really? Yeah? Isn't it? I mean, we don't speak like this, but al-qawla is, isn't it? Man fa'ala al-qawla. Whoever does saying. Yes? So is the word qawl, yeah, you understand what I've said, it translated as man fa'ala al-qawla? Does that make sense to you? Man qala really means man fa'ala al-qawl. Man daraba, man fa'ala daraba. Yes? It's not how we speak, but that's what it means, isn't it, really? Yes? Is that clear to everybody? Now, in this scenario, is the word qawl, is it mutlaq or is it muqayyad? Is there any restrictions how you need to say it? Loudly, slowly, believing, not believing, from your heart, not from your heart? What is it? What's the ayah? What's the hadith? Man qala la ilaha illallah dakhala al-jannah. What does this literally mean without any context? That whoever says la ilaha illallah will enter Jannah, even if you don't believe in it. No? Because it is the verse, the ayah, the hadith doesn't say you have to believe in it. The hadith is mutlaq. Man fa'ala al-qawla bi la ilaha illallah dakhala al-jannah. Whoever says it doesn't say you have to believe in it. It's mutlaq. But is that the ruling? Is that the ruling that we understand from all the texts? And tell me why it's not the ruling. So the question that we have here is that in this hadith, the Prophet ﷺ says, Man qala. What does qala yaqulu mean? To say, it's a tongue. Correct? Yes? Whether you believe it or not, is that condition of qala yaqulu? No. So in this sentence, is there, for example, a qaid? Man fa'ala al-qawla mu'minan bihi, believing in it. Muqinan bihi, believing in it, having yaqeen in it. Is there a qaid of the word qawl? How you need to say this word? Is there any restriction in this? No. So in theory, if you look at the word in itself, if you say anybody says la ilaha illallah dakhala al-jannah, does it mean does this ayah, does this hadith tell us you have to believe in it? Even if a person, he's not believing it, he just says la ilaha illallah. You say, mate, a friend, just say la ilaha, whether you believe it or not, just say, according to us, will he enter Jannah? No. But why are you bringing that qaid? Where are you getting that condition of you have to believe in it from? The hadith says, Man qala la ilaha illallah dakhal jannah. Why are you bringing the qaid onto a mutlaq? Go ahead. Correct. Correct. Because there are other evidences from the Quran and the hadith which say that you have to believe in it. Not just saying it. Yashhadu Allah, yashhadu. Some verses have yashhadu. And yashhadu means to testify. And testify means what? Qala, or you say al-qawlu bil-iman, al-qawlu bil-iman. Saying what's believing. Other verses say a munafiq will not enter the fire, not enter Jannah. So when you look at the other texts are talking about the same topic, entering into Jannah. All of them say you have to have shahada, belief in this one. You have to have iman in your heart. It's not about. So the other hadiths are muqayyad, and they're talking about the same topic, about la ilaha illallah, about dakhal al-Jannah. So therefore, in the other hadiths, the quyud, the conditions that are met, what you have to bring those quyud over onto here. So therefore, the other qaid, the other restrictions in the other hadiths, which talk about the same topic, Allah, you have to have belief, you have to have it in your heart. Correct? So that's why we say here that this is mutlaq, but you will bring the qaid over from the many other hundreds of texts which say you have to have belief in this to enter Jannah. Okay? Another example now. So the rule is, if a word is mutlaq in one text, but muqayyad in another, both texts must be analyzed. You analyze both texts. Okay? If they are regarding the same issue, what are they? They are regarding the same issue. Then you analyze both texts. Okay? And if they are regarding the same issue, you will bring the qaid from one over to the other. For example, and if they're different, then you leave it. So for example, we have one example. Like this example in here now. إِنَّمَا حَرَّمَ عَلَيْكُمُ الْمَيْتَةَ وَالدَّمَ وَلَحْمَ الْخِنْزِيرِ. In this verse, the word dam is mutlaq. Allah says, we have made dead carrion, dead animals haram for you. We have made pork, lahm al-khinzir, haram for you. And we have also made dam, blood, haram for you. Correct? It's also made what? Blood haram for you, ad-dam. Now in here, does it say what kind of blood? Is it mutlaq or is it muqayyad here? It's mutlaq. However, look at the next verse. It says here, لا أجد فيما أوحي إلي محرما على طاعم يطعمه إلا أن يكون. So I'm not going to through the whole verse, but it means here, mayta. So this mayta is haram. So both verses, mayta is haram. There's no qaid. That means that all carrying, there's no qaid in any verse. Even lahma khinzir. There's nothing about lahma khinzir, khinzirin kabirin, khinzirin saghirin, khinzirin saminin, fat, skinny. It's just. But here now we have daman masfuha. Masfuhan means flowing. Correct? Has flowing blood. Daman masfuha. Now, in terms of the flowing of the blood, this is now become muqayyad. Now, are they both verses talking about the same thing? It's talking about what? Dam, mayta, and lahma being haram, lahma khinzir being haram, isn't it? So what we do regarding this qaid now? Should this qaid be transferred over to here? You say yes. Because you're talking about the same thing, therefore we transfer the qaid from one to the other. So إِنَّمَا حَرَّمَ عَلَيْكُمُ الْمَيْتَةَ وَالدَّمَ. And here dam refers to daman masfuhan, because the top verse is mutlaq, this verse is muqayyad, but it's the same topic, so therefore the qaid from the bottom will apply to the top. Another example. وَمَنْ قَتَلَ مُؤْمِنًا خَطَأً. If you kill another Muslim by mistake, car accident, gross negligence, manslaughter, involuntary manslaughter, what do you have to do? You have to free a raqabatin mu'mina. You have to free a believing slave. So now here's what? Raqabatin mu'mina. The next verse says here, if you do zihar with your wives, zihar is a form of talaq that the Arabs used to do before. It's not halal, and it will count as a talaq, but it will be a sin. We'll do that in Qudur inshallah later on. So here, what do you have to do? Tahriru raqabatin. So here is what? Qatala mu'minan. Here's yudahiruna min nisa'ihim. You do zihar, a form of talaq. In permissible, we have to give it talaq. And the third scenario is what? La yu'akhidhukum Allahu fil laghwi fi aymanikum. It says here now, what is this here? If you do what? Ayman. Ayman means oaths. Oaths, manslaughter, and here is now zihar, which is a form of talaq. So if you do any of these, So there's three different conditions we're talking about. We're talking about manslaughter, we're talking about zihar, we're talking about oaths. Now in all of them we have here tahriru raqaba fi mu'mina, number one, tahriru raqaba and tahriru raqaba. Now the question is, do we transfer the qaid from one to the number two and number three? Yes or no? That is Imam Abu Hanifa rahmatullahi alayhi's opinion. Imam Abu Hanifa rahmatullahi alayhi says that we're talking about three different things. We're not talking about the same tahrim, hurma. We're not talking about dukhulul jannah. We're talking about three different topics. In ayah number 2, we're talking about zihar. The compensation of zihar and the forgiveness of zihar comes about by tahrir raqabah. In the second, third ayah, talking about oath. If you take a false oath, you have to free a slave. And the top one is talking about manslaughter. So because each of these three are different, we're not going to transfer the qaid. The other fuqaha say, no, we would transfer. So now this is now what? Now we can say here, what do you think? Let's finish off right now. This raqaba being mutlaq or muqayyad, is it qat'i dalala or dhanni dalala? Is it qat'i dalala or dhanni dalala? What do you think? If dhanni dalala, you have to free a slave, that's qat'i dalala. Because what tahrir, we know what tahrir is khas, we know what it means. We know what raqaba means, that's qat'i dalala. It's qat'i thubut from the Quran, qat'i dalala. But does it remain mutlaq or does it become muqayyad? The scholars have differed because of different way of analyzing it. So now the raqaba being mutlaq and freeing any slave or freeing a believing slave, that additional part now is what qat'i dhanni dalala. Because now the scholars have differed in trying to understand. Some scholars say, no, you bring the mu'mina qaid here. Some say you don't bring it. Now Imam Abu Hanifa says you don't bring it. That's the way he analyzes the text. So now his opinion that you can free any slave is dhanni dalala. Imam Shafi says, no, you have to free a mu'min slave in all three conditions. That's also dhanni dalala. Do you understand? Is that clear? Okay. We'll continue from here tomorrow, inshallah. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Nahmaduhu wa nusalli ala rasulihil kareem. So let's continue from what we were doing yesterday. And we were discussing mutlaq and muqayyad. And we're discussing whether the qaid, when you have a qaid or a restriction on any one part, does it apply to the second part or not? So one more example. Let's have it here. We have one verse. وَالَّذِينَ يُظَاهِرُونَ مِن نِسَائِهِمْ ثُمَّ يَعُودُونَ لِمَا قَالُوا. Those who do dhihar, and I told you before, dhihar is a form of talaq that these Arabs used to do. We'll do that in Qudur, inshallah, in more detail. So if they do this, they have so the components of this is what? The kafara, the expiation of this is what? تَحْرِيرُ رَقَبَةٍ مِّن قَبْلِ أَن يَتَمَاسَى فَمَنْ لَمْ يَجِدْ, whoever doesn't have the ability, فَصِيَامُ شَهْرَيْنِ مُتَتَابِعَيْنِ مِن قَبْلِ أَن يَتَمَاسَى فَمَنْ لَمْ يَسْتَطِعْ فَإِطْعَامُ 60 مِسْكِينًا. So if you look at this verse here now, we have one ruling. The ruling is regarding what? Dhihar. So those who do dhihar, yes, if they give their wives this form of talaq, which is not permissible, and then they want to take them back, they want to cancel the talaq, then there are three things they have to do. Either tahrir raqabah, faman lam yajid, faman lam yastati. So option 1, option 2, and option 3. We have 3 options, correct? So far so good. Now in option 1, what do we have here? In option 1 it says here, tahrir raqabah min qabli an yatamasa فشهرين متتابعين من قبل أن يتماسا. The first two, are they mutlaq or muqayyad? Okay, let's look at this. The raqaba, is the word raqaba mutlaq or muqayyad? How is it specified? This is a time. I mean, this is the maf'ul fi of the masdar. So if freeing a slave, قبل أن يتماسى, before the husband and wife come together. Must say Muslim to touch, meaning before they cohabit again. So now we have here this raqaba. Is raqaba mutlaq or muqayyad? There's nothing about the slave. There's nothing about the iman, mu'min or ghayr mu'min. There's nothing about age, gender, nothing. But what is tahrir muqayyad with? Is tahrir muqayyad or not? Tahrir. What's it muqayyad with? It's muqayyad with time. So now we know that if they do dhihar, the tahrir raqaba, the raqaba is mutlaq, any raqaba, and but the tahrir is muqayyad. you have to do the tahrir before they come together again and spend time together again. Correct? Okay. فَمَنْ لَمْ يَجِدْ فَصِيَامُ شَهْرَيْنِ. Now, is shahrain mutlaq and muqayyad? Is shahrain mutlaq and muqayyad? Very good. Why is it muqayyad? Because it says here, it's describing the shahrain. What kind of shahrain? Tataba'a, yatabu, tatabu'an. Consecutive. So now we know the two must have to be consecutive. How is consecutive? Yes, consecutive. Correct? Consecutive. Now mutatabi'ain is a qaid. So now we know this is muqayyad. Before it is muqayyad. But does it say? So what's it? Is it muqayyad for Rabiul Awwal, Rabiul Thani, Jumadul Ula? Is it muqayyad? Why is it muqayyad? Which aspect is it? So in terms of which month is it mutlaq or muqayyad? Yeah. So it is mutlaq regarding which month, but it is muqayyad regarding the two months have to come one after the other. Do you understand? Okay. Now, the siyam is a maf'ul fi. The siyam is a masdar again. And qabla itamasa is maf'ul fi of what? A masdar of the siyam. Is the siyam muqayyad or not? It's muqayyad. Now the siyam must take place before the husband and wife come together again. So option 1, you free a slave. Option 2, you fast for two consecutive months. And option 3, it'amu sittina miskina. Okay. Now, is miskinan mutlaq or muqayyad? The word miskinan. Is there any condition? Is there any condition regarding this? No, so regarding this is mutlaq. So does it have to be male? The miskin? Do they have to be male? Do they have to be female? Do they have to be young? Do they have to be old? Once the word miskin fits over them, that's it. That's fine. And sittin, is this wadih or ghayr wadih? The word sittin. Is it a known word or unknown meaning? Or what kind of word? Is it am or is it khas? It's khas. It's 16. It means what? 60. It has one meaning. I mean, 60 refers to 1, 2, 3, 4, 48, 49, 50, 59, 60. But does it have multiple? The 16 means, it can mean this or this. It has only one meaning, doesn't it? That one meaning is a plural meaning, but it only has one meaning, doesn't it? Yes? So now, is this word, so this whole verse is what? Qat'iyu dalala, qat'iyu thubut, this whole verse. In terms of thubut, what is it? It's qat'iyu thubut. The word sittin is a qat'iyu dalala, qat'iyu thubut. The word sittin is a qat'iyu dalala or dhanniyu dalala. But the word 60 is a qat'iyu dalala or dhanniyu dalala. The word sittin. Because 16 only has one meaning. 16 means 60. It doesn't mean 45. It means 70. So it's qat'iyu dalala. Miskinan, you could say miskinan. We could look at miskin and say, you know what? Miskinan could be a slight ghayr wadih. What classifies as a miskin really? How do we define miskin? We'll do that in ghayr wadih, inshallah. So now the word sittin is khas. The word miskin is mutlaq. Now it'am is, in terms of time, is this mutlaq or muqayyad? We said siyam is muqayyad with min qabla itamasa. Tahrir is muqayyad with qabla itamasa. Is it'am mutlaq or muqayyad? It's mutlaq. Would we bring the qaid over from the top two? You say yes, then that means you agree with Imam Shafi'i rahmatullahi alayhi. And some say, Imam Abu Hanifa says, I think no. That I think so. Imam Abu Hanifa rahmatullahi says no, that is different. That it'am and siyam and tahrir are different things. So even though it's talking about zihar, it's talking about tahrir, siyam and it'am. So they're different. I think Imam Shafi'i rahmatullahi. But you see here. So now, this verse being mutlaq or muqayyad, is that qat'i dalala or dhanni dalala? That the word it'am is mutlaq or is it muqayyad? Is that qat'i dalala or dhanni dalala? The fact that it's mutlaq. Is mutlaq in this verse is qat'i, but is the qaid brought from the top or not? So is mutlaq in this verse, but do you bring the qaid on or not? Is it a mutlaq which becomes muqayyad? Is that qat'i or that dhanni? Scholars, they found that one, and they have to, and the people who say that, look, you have tamasa, qabla tamasa at the top, qabla tamasa here, it is automatically means that qabla tamasa comes here as well. That's why Allah's talking about it. And others say, no, that Allah didn't mention it, means it's not mentioned on purpose. So now this it'am being mutlaq from qabla an yatamasa. Some say now, this being mutlaq is qat'i, but the qaid not being carried forward, that's zanni. You see how much detail there is in this? Yes? Are you following? Does it make sense? Okay. So if you summarize, let's go summarize here quickly again. We said we're doing istidlal, and in istidlal we have istidlal lafzi, is when we get the Quran or the hadith qawli, the verbal hadith, and we derive from those, we do deduction from those. And we have istidlal ghayr lafzi, is also known as what? Istidlal ma'nawi. This is when we use qiyas, istihsan, all of those other concepts. Okay, correct? Then we said we can analyze the individual words in istidlal lafzi, or we can analyze the entire text. When we analyze the individual word, we say, well, we look at the meaning in terms of its clarity, and we look at its usage in terms of its isti'mal. In terms of its meaning, there's two possible meanings. It can be wadih, or it can be ghayr wadih. Wadih means the meaning is known, correct? And in there we have khas and am. Both of these, we say, well, this is what? Qat'i. Qat'i thubu, qat'i dalala. Why? The meaning of a khas is known. If you reject that meaning, you're rejecting the word. Like, for example, the word Nuh, the word Ramadan, the word Sittina Miskina. These are all the words that the Arabs knew. There's no difference of opinion regarding it. Faghsilu wujuhakum faghsilu. The Arabs know what faghsilu means. Faghsilu. So faghsilu. The word faghsilu means washing. Famsahu means wiping. These are known words that has no ambiguity in them. And then you have am. Am also, you know the meaning of this. It's a known meaning, but it has multiple members. And we'll do that inshallah in the next lesson, inshallah. Multiple members. Okay? And then we have the khas is two types. The khas can be mutlaq or the khas can be muqayyad. Mutlaq means is what? What does mutlaq mean? How to translate mutlaq? Unrestricted. And muqayyad means what? Restricted. It has some kind of naat, some kind of sifa, some kind of maf'ul fi, some kind of restriction to this. And we said what? The mutlaq, the muqayyad can be taken to the mutlaq in certain scenarios. Like for example, قال لا إله إلا دخل الجنة. We see the other nusus, the other text tells us that the what is referring to man قال لا إله إلا with belief. That will be carried over. And some say no. Well, that one is muttafaq alayh. And then other scenarios is not taken over. The qaid is transferred over or not. There's ikhtilaf regarding that. You have to analyze it case by case scenario. You following? You understand how what these words mean? Any questions from anybody? Okay. Subhanallah wa bihamdihi subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika wa nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta wa nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk.